Hey everyone, and welcome to yet another session of Contributor Roadmap series. This is Sankalp Swami from Aviyel's community team. My dear friends, Contributor Roadmap series is a step-by-step approach towards open source contributions with interactive sessions and mentorship. If you're someone who is looking forward to gain exposure as a first-time contributor to a project or open source in general, this is an opportunity you wouldn't want to miss out on. In this session, we have Melvin Thomas, backend engineer at Totto Learning. So in this session, Melvin will be introducing our explorers to the Django framework. Thanks, Melvin, for being here. Stage is yours now.
So myself, I'm Melvin Thomas. I'm basically a computer science, third year computer science student, and I've been working with Django for the past 2 years. So yeah, I'm just here to talk about what I learned and how I think is the best way to go forward with Django. So some of the things might be different to you people. Some of you may have different opinions. So if you think anything, and there might be mistakes in what I say. If you come across anything wrong, I say, please feel free to correct me. So I guess we'll start. So first of all, Django is a web framework that is developed by Python, that is developed on top of Python. So we have a lot of web frameworks these days. So web is becoming one of the most important things. Web is being very much hyped up these days because on an average, every time someone uses a computer, they spend more than 80% of the time in front of a computer. So that is why web apps have been gaining popularity these days. Plus, it's easier. You don't have to go somewhere. You don't have to install something on your laptop or your mobile phone to use a web app. So it's very easy. If you have a browser, you can access it anywhere. So that's why web apps have been gaining a lot of popularity. So Django is one web framework that is developed using Python. So and Django has gained a lot of popularity. One of the main reasons is because Django is a very easy to use framework. So I assume I was told everyone that attending would have a basic knowledge of Python, so I would not be speaking about that. So yeah, so Django is built on top of Python, and this is not the only web framework we have. We have Node.js, we have Laravel, we have Flask, Django. Django is just one among them. One of the main reasons why Django is very popular is because it's very easy to start developing in Django. So usually when we do a project, we'll need to do things like you need to configure your project, you need to configure your database, you need to do a whole lot of configuration before you start doing a project. So comparatively, there is very little amount of configuration needed in Django when you start doing a project. So this is my personal view. When someone who is new to web development starts to build a project, if you have to go through all those configurations, chances are you'll make a lot of mistakes and chances are you'll get tired of that. So on the other hand, if you use Django, most of these configurations, Django comes in with the basic set. Django has a simple command that is called start project. If you use that command, Django just uses a template and comes up with a set of default settings, and that's it. That will have all the basic functionalities that you need. It will have things like it will have a basic authentication built in. There will be a basic database connection. You have to do just very little work to get started. So that is one reason why I think Django is very popular. So let's get rather than talking about Django, what I was thinking is I would show you how to, especially citing your first Django. I am planning to show you how to start a Django project and how you would go for doing things. And using that, I plan to explain the different components of Django. So I'll just share my screen. So I hope it's visible. So you can start a Django project using the command. So first of all, you need to install Python in Django, and then you can use a simple command called Django-admin start project. Yeah, will be easy and the project name. Okay, so let's go with Django-admin project, and you give your project a name. Let's call it my project. So once you do this command, so cd my project, and let's open that up in VS Code. view your project. So once you do that, so this is the project structure that comes in. So you'll have a file called manage.py, and this is just a basic configuration file that is used to start your Django app and everything that your Django app does. This is for how we communicate. And then there is then if you look into it, we see a settings file. This is one of the main files that is created. Here, if you look at this, we can see there is a set of pre-installed apps, and another thing, like I said, you get the databases. Even the database is configured by default, and these are the general settings that any project or a general project would need. So this is what comes with Django. So something you need, and right now, if you look at this project, we can go into the terminal. I guess I need to increase my font size as well. Okay. I hope it's visible. So right now, all I did was, and you can start up server right away. Right. So I go Python manage.py run server. So yeah, I need, first of all, we need to have a virtual environment for the project. So here, first of all, one good practice when we do any project is to have a virtual environment for your project. So I use a Python virtual environment management module called virtual env. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just creating a virtual environment for my project. That will just install the basic Python files in my directory. So when I run that command, you can see now there is an env file that is here. So it is just installing basic. So what this does is it creates a separate Python installation in our project folder, so that whatever changes we make, whatever modules we install, or whatever changes we make to our project doesn't affect our computer. Wait for that. In the meantime, talking about Django. So one thing we need to understand about Django is its architecture. This is done. So env /script/activate. So now we activated the virtual environment. So now we have a fresh environment, and we need to start by installing Django again. Okay, so one of the main things we need to understand about Django is its architecture. So Django runs on an architecture called MVT. That is, so MVT is model view templates. Model view template. So these are the three main components of this. Is once you understand MVT architecture, you're basically done. You're basically done with Django. Whatever that is the basic architecture of Django. Whatever functionalities you need to implement or whatever you need to do, it can be easily implemented once you understand the model view template architecture. So what these three things are as. So what model is model is where we store our data, or model is basically a Python class. I'll get more models when I come here. So once I'm here, if I Python manage.py run server, this should have a start. So I can visit my server at 127.0.0.1 full code 8000. So if I click on that, so you see this, the installer works successfully. So this means how you started your project is successful, and you have a successfully running Django server. So this is one key difference between other frameworks and Django. As soon as you start a project, you can simply have you can simply have your development server up and running with just one or two commands. That is one major advantage I found out. One major advantage of using Django. So now let's get into the development parts. So like I said, so I am planning to have a to-do app where we can add things that have to be done. That we can add to-do and we can fetch them. So basic things. So like I said, there is a model view template architecture. I will explain more about this as we go on. So basically, what a model is a Python class, and what we use it for is for the database. We use a Python model, or it's a Python class, and in this class we can provide attributes. So suppose we are building a to do. So in Django we have a model.py file where we, if you look into our project, uh, inside, okay, just a minute. Yeah, something I forgot is. So now we have a Django project. So this is a basic Django project. So now what we do is we build sub apps inside this. So we need to start with an app. So for that we will start uh, Python. We have a manager.py. So this manager.py is, we communicate with Django app using the manager.py. So if we need to run server, our command was manage.py run server. So now we will start app. So how Django works is, I think I'll explain. So how Django works is we have a project and inside that we create apps. So there will be, so suppose if you are building a big project, there might be multiple apps. So there will be one app for authentication, then we can have another app for other purposes. So for main functions, we can have sub apps. So one advantage of having multiple apps is, so suppose you're defining an app in this project, if you can actually reuse the same app in other projects. That is one advantage of having apps. So maybe we hope I have ping. So yeah, let's get there. So yeah, so how Django works is we have an overall project. Yeah, so we have a project and we have multiple apps. So one advantage is, suppose we have another project. So suppose we are working on another project where we require the same functionalities. What we can do is we can directly use all the code that is, we can directly map this app in here, this app to another project. We can actually use the entire code. We can actually use this code in another app. So, and we can actually publish independent apps on Python, on the Python community. So when people can actually reuse these apps. So that is how Django works. So, and for that, if you look at the settings, we have a set variable called installed app. So this here we can actually view, yeah, if you need to reuse an app that you formerly wrote, you can actually copy that code here, and if you add that app's name to this installed app, that app actually becomes part of our project. So we, to start, we need to start an app first. Python manage.py start app. I would call it the to-do app. So yeah, now you can see another folder is created. So this has our to-do app. So if you look at this, like I said, we have our models, like the models and views are available here. So models. So when we start a project, what we need is we need to have a clear-cut idea of how we are going to design our model. So in our case, we are only going to using one model. So it's called a to-do model. So class to-do, and then I would say models dot model. So we are inheriting something from the models type, from the models package that is already there in the Django. So this class actually tells Django that this is a model. Okay, so now we put a full column there and that should get us something's wrong. Okay, yeah, we don't need that to be caps lock class to do models dot model. So this actually tells Django that this is the model that we'll be using to store data in the database. So for a to do, what do we need? We would need a title for the to do app. Title is equal to models dot char field. So we are going, the data type will be character, and say maximum length would be say 30 characters. And yeah, then we would need a description. Description description equal to models dot text area text field. So in text, for a text field, we don't need to actually specify the maximum length. By default, it's 2000 characters if I remember correctly. So now we have a model. Now we need to use. So now we need to be able to use this model. So what a model is, we have attribute that is a for a in our case, we know that a to do will have a title and a description. So we said we need to store these two data, and what are we defined what these data types are. So now what we need to do is we need to have these into our database. So what we can do that is, so now if you look at the server, Python -py run server, we would still see no changes. You shouldn't be seeing any changes. Yeah. So what it happens is, so like I said, and so what happens if you look here, we can see that we have 18 unapplied migrations enabled. So what a migration process is called. So now we defined a model which says we need a to-do app, we need a to-do model, and we need to have a title and description. So now what we need to do is we need to have this table in our database for us to be able to use that. So that process of where we convert this model into a database table, that is not as migration. So one advantage of Django is we don't need to write any SQL or code to convert this. So Python does all that by itself. So what we do is, once we define a model, we run Python manage.py make migrations. So what this does is it creates a so now if you run, you can have we see no changes detected. That is because we have not added this app into our installed app. So if we need to use an app, we need to add it to an installed app. So we go here, and the name of our app was to-do app. So we add that here, and now if we run migrations, we can see that it created a model to-do, and inside here in to-do, if you look, we can see a migrations folder, and there is an 001 initial. So this is the migration file that is used to create models. And here we can see the details. So Django automatically adds an ID field, and then there is a title field, and then there is a description field. So now we have the migrations. Now we need to apply this to our database. So for that we run Python manage.py migrate. So what that does is it applies all the migration. So this is what happens when you run migration for the first time. So we have a admin. When we start a project, there is an admin or content type sessions, messages, and static. These many apps are already pre-installed. So what you see here, these are all in migrations from those projects, those apps, and at the end we can see there is our migration. That is to-do app dot 001 0001 underscore initial dot py. Even that now that migration is also applied. So yeah. Now that means our model is added. Now Django actually has an admin panel from where we can actually add, and if you look in not my project, if you look at to do app, you can see an admin.py. So I'll do something. Yeah, I'll explain what this is vector. Um, yeah. Like I said, Django actually comes with a pre-installed admin. So for to use that, we'll also need a super user. So Python manage.py create super user. I will need to put in my username. Asking for a password. Yes. So I should be able to run. If I run my server. Yeah. If I go back here to /admin, it actually comes. It actually comes to the admin panel. I can log in here. So yeah, this is how powerful Django becomes. That is, we didn't have to write any code for all this stuff, but it's automatically there. So there is a users tab which we can use to add users, and there is also this to-dos that we came up with. So if you look here, we can actually see a list of to-dos. We can add a to-do, saying test one, and this is a single test to-do. And by go ahead and see that we can have a to-do of one here. So yeah, this is what our model does. It creates a template for with which we can add data to our database. So here, once you have that we can actually add data to our database. So so that is what a model does. It creates a template for us to add data into our database. So that is one major part of a model. Now there is something called a view. So what a view does is, let's clear all this. So Django has three parts. That is a model, and then there is a view, and okay, so that changes for us. More to do that, and then there is templates. So we have models. Okay, product, flat. We have views, and we have templates. So what happens is, sure. Yeah, we can use any database with Django. So when we start a project, it comes pre-installed with the SQLite 3 database. We can actually change it to use any other database. We can use a Postgres database, we can use a Mongo database, we can use a MySQL database. That's our choice. So all you have to do for that is we look here. Yep. So this is the default setting. We can actually we can change these settings. If suppose we use a Postgres database, there is a Python package for that called scopg2. We have to install that, and instead of SQLite 3 engine, we can use that engine, and we can actually we can create the database and provide the credentials here. So we can change the database we use using these settings here. I hope that's clear. Okay. Great. So let's get back. So what we do in the model is we store all our data in the model. So now we know where we store data. So what ideally and now this view. So what a view does is a view actually fetches data from the database. So models will actually this data flow. I would like the color. Yeah. So the data, what we use a view for is to fetch data from models. So what a view does is using a view. So a view is where the logic of the logic of our web app is. Yeah. So this is where we write all the logic part. So how we interact with the web app is through URL. So that is if it's a so suppose we're using an Android app, we have buttons and we have swipe gestures to interact. So usually how we interact with the web application is through the URL. So if we need to go to admin, we go admin. So there are buttons, but at the end of the day, what buttons does is they actually redirect you to new URL. So what we do is all the logic of our code will be written in the view. So let's see how we can. So all the we use the views to fetch our. So what we do in the views, we fetch details from the model. So suppose we are looking for a specific to do, we query the database for that specific to do using the view, and then from the view we can actually change it. Like we can specify modifications. So whatever we need to do, and then we can send the data back to the model. So that is what a view does. Now, and what we do in a template is we have now we got the view, we have the models, and we got the data. Suppose let's consider we need to view all the tools. So what we need to do is we need to query the database and get the list of all to-dos that is there in the database. So we do a single query and we get all the data. Now we need to show this. So what we do there is all this information is there in the view now. Now these views will pass it on to templates. So all the data that we got will be passed on to templates. And using these templates are usually HTML files. So we can actually have we can have define an HTML file as a template, and then in these templates we can actually show data to the user. So that is a brief about MVT. So if we so I'm trying. So what we're trying to do is build an app in an hour. So that's a brief explanation. If you guys have any queries, we can go for that then. And yeah. So now what we need to do here is we need to fetch all the to-do. So let's define a view here. Def get all to-dos. And then we pass in a parameter that is a request. So there. Yeah, it's not a bad. There's some noise in surrounding. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. So what we do here is Django has another powerful feature called the ORM, that is the object relational mapping. So suppose we need to get all the to-dos, what we do is, so suppose what we are trying to do is fetch all the to-dos. So we need to import the model here. So from dot models import to-do. And what we do here is we do something else. Okay, so now we need a template for this. Suppose, okay, let's go for a basic view here. Return from Django use import HTTP response. Okay, Django HTTP response. So yeah, this is one part. This is one thing I would like. So this is one part. So Django has a very extremely good documentation. If you look at that, so for more reference, this is something I would suggest to all of you. I've read documentation for a lot of things, but I've not come across anything that is as precise and useful as the one for Django. Even in Django, they actually have a tutorial of making a to-do app. So this is what I used to learn Django in the first place. Yeah, this is a very detailed tutorial, and at the end of the day, every time you get stuck on Django, you Google it at the end of the day, somehow you will reach here. So yeah, so it's Django.http, http import http response. So return http response. Suppose we save this. Now we have one more important part here, that is the URLs. So URLs, so like I said, we interact with the web app using URLs. So suppose we need to go see, suppose we are doing this. Another part would be, yeah, if I go back to a full colon 8000, this URL is what brings us home. If we need the admin, I say take me to /admin. So it takes me here. When I click on to do, what it does is it goes to to-do app /to do. So how a web app and how a user interacts with a web app is basically through the URL. So what we do here is, and now we have our logic here. We have a view here. Now we need to say this has to be triggered when we go here. So say we put that here. Instead of this, we put that here. So what we do is we need to tell Django that when we come to some URL, it has to go this. So what I do here is we import the view here from so this is from to do app dot views in import get all tools. So what I do here is I make a copy instead of /admin. I say it is a blank screen. So there is nothing. So this is whatever comes after the full call 9,000 part. There is nothing there, and we say it is get all tools. Get all tools. Now you got terminal. Yeah, so server is still running. Now if we reload this, we can see hello world. So what we did is we said localhost 8000 and /nothing should go to this view. So what is this? What does this view do? This gives us a response. Hello world. So how the web works is completely in a request response cycle. Suppose we have a client here. Let's see, that's a client, and we have a web server here. How this works is if a client needs something specific, it sends a request to the server, and the web server processes the request and it does this. So it gets the view, it gets the request, and then it looks what data it needs. So it does whatever logic that we have written, it does whatever process we have to do, and then it generates a response. Yeah, that didn't come out right. It generates a response and it is given to the client. So that is how a request response cycle works. So that is what we do here. So in our view, we are passing the request object, and then we are giving back a response. So this is how we write a basic view. So all our logic that we have going, I'll show that later. So now I said one more important part of this was templates. So we need to have a, so what we do is we need to create a folder called templates, templates, templates. And yeah, that is inside migrations. Nope. Inside it to do that. Yeah, it should be outside to do that. No. So that's where we have our, where that's a big file. So we keep our, okay. So yeah, let's get back here. So this is a template test. And now what we see here, here, Django render, Django dot shortcuts. So what happens is I know what function to use. I don't know where to import it from. So that's Django dot shortcuts. Okay, that was there all along. So now I'm saying instead of returning a response, I can render a template. Return render. We pass in the request body, and then we say index.html. That's not where I was supposed to have the template. That's So I need to specify where I have the templates. Import OS, and then we go here. OS dot path dot child. Please check templates. So yeah, now there is a template test. So now instead of returning an HTTP response, it is rendering our template. So what we did here was we have a setting. So everything there is a general settings in the templating engine is already there. We just need to provide the directory. So instead of using templates, we can use any other thing. So we just need to add that here. So now if you look at this, instead of doing that, now we are rendering things from our own template. So now what we need to do is we need to fetch all the to-dos that is there and we need to return. So what Django does, let's see how to do that. So let's go to the terminal for a while. Now, yeah, to connect with the database, we can also use the shell. So Python manage.py shell. And now from to-do apps.models, import to-do. Now if I say I say k is equal to to-do dot objects dot all. So this is how we can actually retrieve all instances of a particular model from the database. So now if I look at k, I can see a list that takes query that we can see a query set object that has one to do in it. So suppose I need to add another to do, I can actually do this to do dot objects dot create, and I can say a title will be to do from shell. This is a test to do on the shell. If I do that, create takes one position argument. Okay, maybe I used it wrong. Okay, so I just need to do things. Oh, wait a minute. I don't need to do create. I can do this. Alright. Okay. If I do to do yeah, so that just created another to do. See, if we do things like to do, we can actually create an object. Like if we just like we create objects of a class, we can do to do, and we can pass the parameters and object we created. Now, if we come back to our admin, let's to see here. So here is our to do. Yeah, this is our to do. So if you go back to our admin, to do, we can see to do not here. Yeah, we need to save this to the database. To do dot save. That was not supposed to happen. To do dot save. Okay, I don't know what that happened. We need to do this. We see k is equal to k dot save. ID expected a number. Okay, we needed to give an ID as well. Sorry about that. We already have one. So let's go with two. This should work. If we look at k dot, not sure. Okay, we saved it to the database, and if we reload, now we have two to-dos here. So that is how we can actually use the shell. Now, yeah, so k equal to we do that again, where is it? To do.object.org, and if you look at K, we can see there is two objects. Now we can actually use this is something called the Django ORM, that is object relational mapping. This is also one important feature of Django. What this enables is, so because there is ORM, we do not need to write SQL queries. So why why is not recommended? One reason is it is easier for us. It saves a lot of time. And another thing is because when we write manual queries, there is a possibility that it could be vulnerable to SQL injections. So ORM, so Django ORM is something that has been thought out very carefully and written out to avoid and minimize SQL injection. So that is why it's always recommended to use the ORM. So suppose we need to get a specific object, we can do things like k equal to do dot object dot get. I can give ID equal to 2. That is what we created. And name, okay, capital D, capital where's capital. Okay, I'm not going to do. So we go, let's say case, we create a context variable. I will tell you what a context variable is. We create an empty dictionary, and then we say to-dos is equal to-do dot objects dot org. So that will give us all the to-dos. And now we need to pass this. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to pass this to the template. So that is where the context variable comes in. Context variable is actually a dictionary where we can pass in name, key value, page. So I am saying context of to-dos is what the value we assign is this value, that is to-dos again. Now we also need to pass that value here. So we are actually passing the context dictionary here. Now if we come to the template, now we need to show all the to-dos. So let's create a heading here. It is to-dos. Okay, so let's start an ordered list, and inside that I'm saying let's say for to do in TODS to-dos. So I go to the to-dos and we do. So this is another feature. This is something else. This is something we use in Django. This is a templating language we use called Jinja 2. Here what we can do is we can actually use for loops. We can use a for loop and we can use condition statements to render different portions of HTML. So what we are trying to do is for each element of the to-do, we need to have an element. We need to have a list element, and then we need to show the to-do. So we start with to-do element, and so in Jinja, we use a brace and a mod symbol for loops and statements, and we use double braces for placeholders. So inside this, what do we do? To-do dot title. We show the title here. So that should actually get us a good thing. So let's go here. Unhashable type slice. I don't know what that is. Oh, right. So this is not how you assign it to a dictionary. This is how you do it in a dictionary. So context of to-dos is equal to to-dos. So server, yeah, server is running. Very loud. So we can see both the to-dos are actually loaded. Now if we go back here, localhost 127.1000/admin, and let's say I'm adding another to-do 3 template test, and So now if I reload this again, to do this. So if you look at the source code, what we can see is what we did here was in our template, we started an unordered list, and we said for each to-do element, we needed a list element, and inside the list element, we needed the title. So if you look at the source code, Django actually takes this template. So this is how templating works. So Django takes the template, injects that, and the view takes the template, it injects the data, and it generates the complete HTML. And then this HTML is returned to the browser. However, let's say we use a Django backend or not backend, so whatever backend we are using, at the end of the day, a browser can only recognize HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So what all backend frameworks do is the same thing. So they get the data and the request goes to the backend server. The request is processed, and the server generates HTML, CSS, and JavaScript content for the response, and it is sent back to browser. So the view actually, the Django server takes the template. So it looks at, so if it looks at the view. So first we fetch all the data, and then say we are rendering a template. So what it does is it goes to the template variable and fetches this template. So yeah, so what it does is it goes there and gets the template, it injects our data and returns it. So that is what happened here. Every time we add a new to do, it gets added here. So that is how a to do that. So that is what, yeah, so that is what I thought of showing you guys. So I really hope you guys understood what a model, view, and a template is. So to sum up things, we use a model to put all the data. So we use a model to model the data. So how we are going to store data, how we can use how we are going to store data. What is the relationship between multiple entities? All that will be defined in a model, and then from the model, and then there is a view from which the views where we write all the logic, and we use the URLs to connect these logic functions to each view, and whatever the view returns, we show that to the user using a template. I hope you got a basic understanding of Django. So yeah, that was me. In case you have any specific doubts, I can help you with that. And yeah, I know this is part of a contributor roadmap series. So in case you guys come up with, so whatever I told you today will probably not help you to do a project right away. You guys will need to practice on this. So or rather than someone trying to figure out what a MVT is, it would be much easier for people to understand it once someone actually explains it. So that's what I was going for. I hope you guys got an understanding. Q&A session.
Yeah. If you guys have any question, please post it in the Q&A section.
Yeah, if you guys run, yeah, while doing projects, if you come across any doubts or blockages, feel free to contact me.
Yeah. So yeah, just love the way this event went, Melvin. The way you covered everything, right from setting up the virtual environment to the architecture, model templates, views, everything, object relational mapping, and everything. To-do application is kind of the greatest starting point for any technology to learn. So yeah, it was really wonderful. And for the ones who have joined late, to give you a brief on the event, this is a contributor roadmap series. So it is nothing but a step-by-step approach towards open source contributions through interactive sessions and mentorship. If you're someone who is looking forward to gain exposure as a first-time contributor to any project or open source in general, this is definitely an opportunity you wouldn't want to miss out on. Thank you once again so much for everyone for joining in, tuning in, and yeah, especially Melvin for taking his time out and helping the explorers to get started with Django framework. So yeah.
I guess that's all right. So do I?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So
See you then.
Does anyone have any questions? Do I stay back or do I leave? Yeah. If anyone has any.
If anyone has any questions, they can join Aviyel's Discord server. We will be around. And also Melvin has shared his contact details, so you can contact him directly.
Yeah. Yes, that's it, right?
Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
No, thanks. Yeah. Bye.
Yeah.